Welcome back to another gripping episode of Clips, where we dive into the tough topics that so many shy away from. Today we're shedding light on an issue that's too important to ignore before it spirals out of control. Fortunately, I stumbled upon a couple of YouTube channels that isn't afraid to tackle these hard-hitting subjects head-on. Matt Morse TV, hosted by the fearless Matt Morse himself. And to end the video off, I have a clip from another trustworthy YouTuber, Jake from Rattlesnake TV. Trust me, after checking out this video, you'll want to subscribe and explore all the eye-opening content they both have to offer. In this particular video, Matt takes aim at US Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's provocative comments regarding white men, branding them as a societal threat linked to violence in the United States. Omar argues that if we're going to let fear dictate our safety policies, then the focus should shift onto white men rather than minority groups perceived in the context of jihadist terrorism. The narrator contends that such statements expose a glaring hypocrisy within progressive movements, asserting that they not only deepen divisions but also foster prejudice against white men, who make up about 30% of the US population. As the video unfolds, it highlights a range of controversial statements and alleged misdeeds associated with Omar, painting her as anti-American. It points fingers at her support for illegal immigration and her tendency to downplay acts of terrorism. The tone is unapologetically confrontational, claiming that her radical progressive agenda alienates a sizable portion of the American populace and undermines unity across the nation. By the end, the video delivers a bold message. It's time to remove Omar from Congress and embrace an America First policy that uplifts all citizens regardless of race. Now let's check out on this thought-provoking discussion. Here we go. Watch.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, just when you thought Somalian Congressional Representative Ilhan Omar couldn't get any more unlikable, she had this to say. Take a look.
A lot of conservatives in particular would say that the rise in Islamophobia is a result not of hate, but of fear, a legitimate fear, they say, of quote-unquote jihadist terrorism, whether it's Fort Hood or San Bernardino or the recent truck attack in New York. What do you say to them?
I would say our country should be more fearful of white men across our country, because they are actually causing most of the deaths within this country. And so if fear was the driving force of policies to keep America safe, Americans safe inside of this country, we should be profiling, monitoring, and creating policies to fight the radicalization of white men.
Now let's talk facts, because the data doesn't back her up. According to the US Census Bureau, 2023, the US population is approximately 335 million, with non-Hispanic whites making up approximately 59%, approximately 197 million, and blacks approximately 13%, Possum 44 million, meaning whites outnumber blacks by roughly 4.5 to 1. Zooming in on males, the FBI's 2019 Uniform Crime Report shows non-Hispanic white men account for 30 to 35% of violent crime arrests, despite being approximately 38% of the male population, approximately 63 million. Black men, on the other hand, made up approximately 37% of violent crime arrests, while being approximately 13% of the male population, approximately 22 million. That's a violent crime arrest rate about 3 times higher per capita for black men compared to non-Hispanic white men. These are raw and real numbers, everybody, not opinions. So, despite the larger white population driving higher total arrests, Moini 710,000 versus Char 437,000 for blacks. Omar's cherry-picking white men as the boogeyman ignores both the per capita disparity and the broader context of population size. She knows her fan base won't look up that facts, they just take her word. And just like the rest of the Democrats, they lie to their voter base because they think they are too stupid to figure out the truth. Now, let's hear what Matt has to say about this.
Well, no, progressives like to preach all day about racial inclusivity, but when push comes to shove, they just scapegoat white men for every problem under the sun. Imagine the outrage if a conservative politician said brown or black men were violent, dangerous, and needed federal monitoring for national security purposes. They would be publicly crucified. Their career would be in ashes. But when Ilhan Omar says it about white men, crickets, nobody cares. Ladies and gentlemen, the double standard here is absolutely astounding. The far-left media and the radically progressive political apparatus is totally comfortable normalizing racist anti-white rhetoric as they play coverage for divisive figures like Ilhan Omar, just so long as it suits their radically progressive political agenda.
I couldn't agree more. Matt always has a bold and interesting take on these issues. It's really frustrating when people, especially those in power, use their platform to create division and spread hate. This congresswoman, who gets to enjoy the benefits of living in a country that's all about opportunity, often says things that go against the whole idea of unity and gratitude. Instead of bringing people together, she just stirs up resentment and plays by the rules when it suits her, like when she married her brother to take advantage of a loophole in the American system. When this kind of divisive talk becomes the standard, it usually comes from some misguided efforts to keep everyone happy, mostly with handouts, and a yes-man mentality, which sadly leads to more hostility towards America and its people, particularly white men. Unlike other groups, white folks often don't protest and burn down cities or damage property just because something doesn't go our way. Democrats calls it peaceful protest, but because of that non-response from the white community, it can make some think it's okay to target them without any pushback. The confusion of comparing America with whiteness just adds fuel to a bigger narrative of anti-American feelings, pushing us deeper into blame and division. Because if they hate white people, then they hate America. And if they hate America, then they hate white people. Because that's how they compare the two. That's why white people can't fly the American flag without getting looks like we are racist because we are white and supporting America. This is a big issue, and it really needs handled before it spirals out of control. America isn't a colour, it's a mindset. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I just want to say that my goal is to bring us all together as Americans. I don't support any kind of racism or hate against any race. I'm in an interracial relationship, and my kids are half white and half Mexican. It's tough to watch mainstream media spreading hate and seeing people in power getting away with discrimination. It feels like no one's talking about it, except for a few YouTubers. I'll let a couple of YouTubers wrap up this video with their thoughts, plus share some examples showing how mainstream media always stirs up race issues, no matter what the original topic is. They're just waiting for that gotcha moment. But remember, while they create chaos on the streets, they head back to their gated communities and sleep soundly. We can't let them put us against each other. The relationship between black and white folks has really improved, and we shouldn't let strangers who don't deserve our respect divide us. They're the real enemy. Both blacks and whites have shed enough blood for this country. It's time to unite and move forward, not as just white or black, but as Americans. This is how most Republicans feel. If you don't believe me because you've been influenced by the mainstream media, just have a conversation with a Republican, and I bet you'll see them in a different light. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. So let's finish with a clip from Matt Morse TV, and then another one from the brave YouTuber Jake from Rattlesnake TV. Here you go. Watch.
Just in the last couple of years, Ilhan Omar has downplayed the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Like we said earlier, she said they just weren't that big of a deal. She's also been actively giving illegal immigrants advice and tips on how to evade ICE apprehension and deportations. She infamously endorsed a massive fraud scheme in Minnesota where her fellow Somalian community members embezzled over $250 million worth of COVID relief funds, the single biggest taxpayer scam in United States history. Oh yeah, and let's not forget, it's almost an absolute certainty that she married her own brother to help him gain United States citizenship. So ladies and gentlemen, this is a woman, this is a congresswoman that has absolutely zero respect for the country that accepted her as a refugee. She blames white men, the very people who built this nation, for all of her personal problems, while hand-waving terrorism and helping illegal immigrants flood our borders. In truth, Ilhan Omar's statements vilify a core and foundational segment of America, hardworking, patriotic white men who make up about 30% of our nation's population. She's painting them as violent extremists to portray herself as a persecuted victim, and this isn't just wrong, it's dangerous. It alienates and demonizes well over half the country, fueling division at a time where this country needs unity. And you know what, folks? Why don't we go ahead and address the elephant in the room? If white men in America are so evil and violent and dangerous, why did Ilhan Omar, a Somalian immigrant, decide to come to the country that we built in the first place? If she's really so oppressed, she's free to return to Somalia anytime she wants, where she won't be surrounded by the people that she claims are such a threat, the evil American white men. Her actions scream hypocrisy, and Americans across the country are fed up.
As we wrap up this episode, I wanted to touch on some thoughts from Jake over at Rattlesnake TV. It's definitely important to think about inclusivity and equal rights, especially in our military. Sure, we all have rights, but we also need to look strong and earn respect from leaders worldwide. Honestly, guys in dresses just don't give off that tough vibe. The CNN panel tried to equate trans folks with the black community, saying if we don't let trans people serve in the military, it'll lead to kicking out African Americans too. It feels like they're always making it about race and calling white guys racist. But let's be real. Being transgender is a mental health issue, so you can't just compare the two. This whole debate goes beyond just policy. It really reflects our values as a society. Let's keep digging into these topics and have some smart conversations with those around us. It's important to challenge outdated ideas and work toward a fairer future for everyone, but we can't compromise our national security. I'd love to hear what you think about the scare tactics claiming black individuals could be next to get booted from the military. Let's take a look.
What is the argument other than Trump, Hegseth, just doesn't want trans people in the military?
Well, I mean, I think that the president, we'll ultimately see. I think that's why the court is allowing the president to move forward with this until it works itself through the court system. Maybe the Supreme Court will be the final arbiter here to say, yeah or nay, you can do this. But ultimately, I think the court is showcasing deference to the executive, saying that, look, you're the president, you're over the military. You do, for the most part, get to sort of dictate the standards of our military. And I don't really see how you can push back against that. Again, we'll see what happens in the court.
I can. I'm sorry, I can. What if the president wakes up tomorrow and says, I don't want any black people in the military? Do we give deference to him on that? Well, no, wait a second. It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous because you're discriminating against a group of people in a very similar way. No,
I knew you were going to say that, but it's still
excuse me. Well, I'm glad you.
I'm going to leave this one alone today.
I'm curious. Why is it ridiculous? I mean, you just said the president should be the one who just decides.
Right.
So if he decides, he wakes up tomorrow and says, I think it's bad for morale, it's bad for cohesiveness, for there to be black people in the military, Latino people in the military, just in her hypothetical scenario, what's the difference between that and what we're seeing here?
I mean, are you really going to go down this ridiculous road?
I'm sorry.
This is ridiculous.
So the old race question. I mean, the answer to this is actually just very simple. But obviously, when you're on CNN, when you're on cable news, you can't just come out and say the truth. And they're dancing around it and worried about just telling it how it is. But what an insulting thing to do, by the way, to compare black people to transgender people. No, they were born black, and transgender people have a mental illness called gender dysphoria. If the president came out tomorrow and said that they didn't want black people serving in the military, then it would get struck down by the Supreme Court straight away, and there's no way that he could enact that. But in this case, these people have gender dysphoria. That's a mental illness, and you don't want to be arming people with mental illnesses, and you especially don't want to be sending these people into combat zones where they are responsible for the lives of fellow soldiers.